The Disillusioned Learner. Zarek, a young Coker student with gleaming scales, sat in the lecture hall, his mind swirling with frustration. The words of Professor Zior echoed in his head. Humans were weak, easily subjugated by superior species like ours. But something didn't add up. The diagrams of mutilated human corpses on the holoscreens, the professor's droning voice, it all seemed too convenient. As the class ended, Zarek clenched his fists. He couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to this story than what he had been told. If humans were so weak, why were they still around? Why hadn't they been wiped out long ago? Zarek decided that he needed answers, and he knew exactly where to start. He stormed out of the lecture hall, his claws clicking against the polished floor. The Galactic Academy was vast, filled with students from various species, all busy with their studies. But Zarek had no time for the usual social niceties. He had a mission. He headed straight for the Academy's sprawling digital archives, determined to uncover the truth. Uncovering the hidden truth. Zarek sat down at an empty terminal in the dimly lit archives, his talons tapping furiously at the interface. Access records on early human history, he commanded. The screen flashed with a list of files, but as Zarek scrolled through them, he noticed something strange. Many of the entries were marked as redacted or classified. The few documents that were accessible seemed sanitized, stripped of any real substance. Frustration gnawed at Zarek, but he refused to give up. He needed someone who could dig deeper, someone who could hack into the Academy's most secure files. With a quick tap on his communicator, he sent a message to his friend Corvesh, a fellow Coger known for his uncanny ability to slice through even the toughest security protocols. Minutes later, Corvesh arrived, his tech-laden backpack slung over his shoulder. "What's this about, Zarek?" he asked, plopping down beside him. "The Academy is hiding something about the humans," Zarek replied, his voice tense. "I need to know the truth." Corvesh grinned, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "A challenge? Count me in." The shocking revelation. The two friends huddled around the terminal, Corvesh's fingers flying across the holographic keys. He muttered to himself as he worked, his brow furrowed in concentration. Suddenly, the screen flashed green, and a torrent of previously hidden files flooded the display. As they delved into the documents, Zarek's and Corvesh's eyes widened with each revelation. The files painted a picture of humanity far different from the weak, helpless species their professor had described. Records showed that even when faced with vastly superior alien technology, humans demonstrated a remarkable ability to adapt and overcome. They reverse-engineered advanced weaponry, quickly closing the gap between themselves and their adversaries. But what struck Zarek and Corvesh the most was the humans' unwavering commitment to their survival. They fought with a ferocity and tenacity that seemed to defy their biological limitations. No matter the odds, no matter the cost, they refused to surrender. As they continued to read, a newfound respect for humanity began to take root in their hearts. The Academy had been lying to them, to everyone, about the true nature of these resilient, adaptable creatures. And Zarek knew he couldn't let this deception stand. The confrontation. The next day, Zarek marched into the lecture hall, his eyes blazing with determination. He clutched a data pad filled with the evidence he and Corvesh had uncovered, ready to confront Professor Zior and expose the lies that had been fed to them. As he took his seat, he couldn't help but notice the curious glances from his classmates, who sensed the tension radiating from him. Professor Zior strode into the room, his robe swishing behind him. He began his lecture once again, spouting the same tired narrative about humanity's weakness and inevitable downfall. Zarek's scales bristled with each word, his anger rising like a volcanic eruption. Unable to contain himself any longer, Zarek shot up from his seat. "Professor, I have evidence that contradicts everything you've been teaching us about humans," he declared, his voice echoing through the hall. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Zarek. Professor Zior's face contorted with irritation. Sit down, Zarek. I will not have my lecture interrupted by baseless claims. But Zarek stood his ground. These aren't baseless claims, Professor. I've uncovered records that show humans are far more resilient and adaptable than you've led us to believe. They've reverse-engineered advanced technology, employed innovative tactics, and fought with unmatched determination to protect their species. The confrontation. The next day, Zarek marched into the lecture hall, his eyes blazing with determination. He clutched a data pad filled with the evidence he and Corvesh had uncovered, ready to confront Professor Zeur and expose the lies that had been fed to them. As he took his seat, he couldn't help but notice the curious glances from his classmates, who sensed the tension radiating from him. Professor Zeur strode into the room, his robe swishing behind him. He began his lecture once again, spouting the same tired narrative about humanity's weakness and inevitable downfall. Zarek's scales bristled with each word, his anger rising like a volcanic eruption. Unable to contain himself any longer, Zarek shot up from his seat. Professor, I have evidence that contradicts everything you've been teaching us about humans, he declared, his voice echoing through the hall. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Zarek. Professor Zeur's face contorted with irritation. Sit down, Zarek. I will not have my lecture interrupted by baseless claims. But Zarek stood his ground. These aren't baseless claims, Professor. I've uncovered records that show humans are far more resilient and adaptable than you've led us to believe. They've reverse-engineered advanced technology, employed innovative tactics, and fought with unmatched determination to protect their species. Zarek held up his data pad, the evidence displayed on the screen for all to see. His classmates leaned forward, their interest piqued by the shocking revelations. The uprising. Zarek and his classmates filed out of the lecture hall, buzzing with excitement and confusion. In the corridors, the debate continued, with students huddled in groups, discussing the implications of Zarek's revelations. Over the next few days, word of the controversy spread like wildfire throughout the academy. Students from other classes sought out Zarek and Corvesh, eager to learn more about the truth behind humanity's history. The two friends found themselves at the center of a growing movement, their names whispered in the halls as the ones who dared to challenge the status quo. Emboldened by the support of their peers, Zarek and Corvesh pressed on with their investigation. They spent long hours in the archives, scouring through the hidden files and piecing together a more comprehensive picture of humanity's past. But their actions did not go unnoticed. Professor Zeur, fuming with rage, reported Zarek and Corvesh to the Academy's administration, accusing them of insubordination and spreading dangerous misinformation. The two friends soon found themselves called before a panel of high-ranking officials, their futures at the Academy hanging in the balance. The unlikely ally. As the meeting drew to a close, Zarek and Corvesh were left with a stark choice: abandon their pursuit of the truth and fall in line, or risk everything to expose the lies and deception that had permeated the Academy for so long. Just as they were about to make their decision, Zarek's communicator buzzed with an incoming message from an unknown sender. The text simply read, "I have information about the humans that you need to see. Meet me at the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city tonight. Come alone." Zarek's heart raced. Could this be the break he was looking for? He forwarded the message to Corvesh. "Looks like we've got a lead. You in?" "You know it," Corvesh replied. "See you there." That night, Zarek crept into the darkened warehouse, his senses on high alert. A hooded figure emerged from the shadows. "Zarek, I presume?" the figure asked. Zarek nodded cautiously. "Who are you? What's this about?" The figure lowered his hood, revealing the weathered face of a Thean male. "I am Dr. Zolar, a historian. I've been following your work, and I believe we have a common goal." Zarek's eyes narrowed. "And what goal is that?" "Exposing the truth about humanity," Dr. Zolar said. "For decades, I've been researching their history, and what I've uncovered is nothing short of a galactic conspiracy." The final stand. Back in Corvesh's dorm room, the two friends pored over the files Dr. Zillar had provided. Each new piece of evidence was a revelation, painting a picture of a galactic conspiracy that ran deeper than they ever could have imagined. As they worked through the night, cataloging the evidence and planning their next move, they knew they couldn't trust the usual channels. The Academy, the media, even the government were all likely complicit in the cover-up. "We need to go public," Zarich said, his voice filled with resolve. "Broadcast the truth to the entire galaxy so they can't silence us." Corvesh grinned. "I might know a way, but it's risky." "Riskier than taking on the most powerful forces in the galaxy," Zarich replied with a chuckle. They both laughed, but there was an edge to it. They knew the stakes. They knew the danger, but they also knew they couldn't turn back now. As Zarich stood, his eyes blazing with purpose, he declared, "Let's do this. For the humans. For the truth." Corvesh nodded, his own determination mirroring his friend's. For the truth. The grand auditorium of the Galactic Academy was packed to the brim, a sea of diverse alien faces filling every seat. The air buzzed with anticipation as the stage lights flared to life, illuminating Zarich as he strode to the podium, his head held high. Corvesh and Dr. Zillar flanked him, their presence a silent show of support. Zarich gripped the edges of the podium, his claws leaving slight indentations in the polished wood. He took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping across the audience. "People of the galaxy," he began, his voice booming through the auditorium. "We gather here today to uncover a truth that has been hidden from us for far too long. A truth about the human species and their place in our galactic history." The room fell silent, every eye locked on Zarich as he continued. "For centuries, we have been fed a narrative that portrays humans as weak, inferior, and insignificant. But the evidence we have uncovered tells a different story. A story of resilience, innovation, and unyielding spirit. A story of a species that, despite being outnumbered and outgunned, refused to bow down to their oppressors." Zarich nodded to Corvesh, who activated a holographic display behind him. Images and videos of humans in battle, using alien technology to their advantage, flickered to life. The audience gasped, their disbelief palpable as they watched scenes of human ingenuity and bravery unfold before them. "They reverse-engineered our technology," Zarich continued, his voice steady. "They outsmarted us in ways we never anticipated. And they did it all with a level of determination and courage that we cannot afford to ignore." Murmurs spread through the crowd, a mix of shock, awe, and curiosity. Zarich's heart pounded in his chest, but he pushed forward. "The truth is, humanity is not weak. They are not to be underestimated, and it is time we give them the respect they deserve." As Zarich finished his speech, the auditorium erupted into a cacophony of voices. Some cheered, others argued. But one thing was clear: the galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. Zarich, Corvesh, and Dr. Zillar exchanged glances, knowing that they had just ignited a fire that could not be extinguished. The truth was out, and the galaxy would have to reckon with it.